a murder took place on the cold, cobbled streets of Salford. Dalip Kumar took the precious life of 26-year-old Kathleen Parkinson.
You know, she had her life cut short at the age of 26, but he went on to live this normal, good life, as it was described. He went on to live a good life. And like I said, when I was younger, I heard about the story. And the story was that Dalip was this, man that fell head over heels in love with Kathleen. She led him on. She went to these places with him, and she sort of led him down the merry way, as if she liked him, and none of this was true. And the more that I've delved into it, the more this is not a case of a love story gone wrong. This is a case of someone who had some serious jealous rage and jealousy issues inside of him, and he couldn't bear that Kathleen didn't like him.
This is the story of one man's jilted obsession, an obsession that would consume his every living thought until his wicked deed was fulfilled. Ladies and gentlemen, sit back, hit the lights, and allow me to take you back to 1963.
Fascinating interest, mysterious, wonderful.
It was the 60s. Love was in the air. Flower power. Beatles mania. A new wave of youth burst onto the streets and went against the grain of your traditional British household, breaking free from the clutches of its black and white past. It was out with the stiff upper lip, you better behave attitude, and in with a beehive. Fashion was everything, and music was religion. England was the heartbeat, and the whole world followed. Times were changing, from the space race to the war in Nam. 1963 pays significance in America as the world turns its attention to the assassination of JFK. US civil rights leader Martin Luther King delivers his famous speech, "I have a dream." Whilst in the UK, Henry Cooper knocks down our prime Muhammad Ali. To the amazement of the fans. And the first ever episode of Doctor Who hit the screens for the very first time. But in the midst of the pandemonium, the storm was brewing. Like a witch's cauldron. Bubbling, popping, and spilling over the sides. Inside the mind of one man. His name was Dalip Kumar. And a murder would take place on the cold, cobbled streets of Salford. But first, allow me to explain the backstory of the events leading up to that fatal day. Dalip arrived in the UK from India only months before the murderous act took place, and he found himself a job at R.A. Brands & Co. as a costing clerk in Salford.
And this was the entrance here, and it was a big building, and I think the office block where she worked was here. It's recently been took down in the last couple of years.
Described by his colleagues as a shy young man who always dressed very dapper. Looking back, he was probably trying to fit into his new surroundings and adapt to the new culture. He was encouraged by his managers at Brands and told to engage more with the staff, try to make friends and become more social. Upon doing so, he met and fell head over heels in love with 25-year-old Kathleen Parkinson.
But she was kind, friendly. My mum used to always speak well of her. She had this reputation, just being a nice person to everybody. The only thing I remember is that all the houses in the drive, they all had the curtains drawn, which they used to do that if there was a funeral anyway back then. I can remember that. She was this sort of kind-natured person to everybody.
Kathleen was an attractive, popular young woman, and she was well respected and highly thought of at Brands. Living locally, it was only a short journey from her own on Westwood Drive to her work.
Good morning, Kathleen.
Gradually over time, Dalip plucked up the courage and asked Kathleen to go to the Opera House in Manchester, along with some other friends who worked at Brands.
All right, I'll go.
And Kathleen agreed.
Just as friends.
After they'd been to the theatre, Dalip asked would she like to go back to his house for a drink, but she declined, and she said, "I don't feel the same way about you as you do to me." And with that, she got on the bus and headed back to Pendlebury. The following days and weeks took a hard hit on Dalip's mental state, and he started to deteriorate. He'd got it in his head that Kathleen was in love with him. So much so, he even asked his mother for money as he was going to marry her. But this couldn't have been further from the truth. In reality, arguments had developed at work between the two. He told his work colleagues that she'd belittled him and embarrassed him in front of other people and made fun of him, mocking him. But none of this was true. His mind was running into overdrive. Jealousy and paranoia was consuming the mind of Dalip to the point where he suffered a mental breakdown and an attempted suicide. He was pardoned by his work to take time off and recoup, get himself together, move on with his life. And shortly after the break, he returned to work, bizarrely in the same department as Kathleen, but his mental state still wasn't right, and the cogs were ticking. His deep, dark, sinister thoughts consumed him, and he couldn't take it much longer. On the 27th of March, his act of revenge would stain the blood-soaked cobbles of Laundry Street forever. He was observed by passersby frantically pacing up and down the steps of Cobden Bridge.
Who's that on the bridge?
His erratic behaviour was witnessed by the locals of the area.
Have you seen? What's he doing?
He was waiting for Kathleen, who was making her way to work, unbeknown of what was awaiting her. As she approached,
What is it?
Dalip confronted her,
What do you mean, no?
to which Kathleen apparently laughed, tried to get around him to get to her, but tucked away in the inside of his pocket was a butcher's knife, and he frantically plunged it into Kathleen. It was a frenzied attack, as the blood splattered and sprayed onto the cobbles and the walls of Laundry Street. The screams of shock, horror, and disbelief echoed and reverberated around Brindle Heath. But somehow, she managed to break free from the clutches of her killer, as her handbag fell to the floor in the pool of blood that had formed below her feet, and she ran to the nearest help. There she was met by Charles Wilson, who was a driver that worked at Snowden Bridges, only a few yards away. He had heard the struggle and commotion of the crying screams and fear from Kathleen, and to his horror, she appeared in front of him, staggering away towards him, her clothes saturated in blood, a total of 6 stab wounds to her upper part of the body. And in the confusion and shock of what had just happened, she said, "I've been hit. I've been hit." And she collapsed into his arms. Kathleen was rushed to Salford Royal Hospital. Whilst in the ambulance, fighting for her dear life, she sadly slipped away and died before she got there. And as for Dalip, well, he was left laying down in a pool of blood, with the jilted butcher's knife laying beside his body, as he had also stabbed himself too.
Right, so we're back out today, and another story to tell in Salford. Now this one has been a story that as sort of as a kid I was always told stuff about. I never really knew if it was true or not, but as I've got a bit older and done more research into this case, it definitely is true. Now, like I say, as a kid it was a bit of a myth, and it was something that I was told about, you know, from grandparents, my dad. But it's the story of a woman called Kathleen Parkinson. Now, she was a young girl, like you would have probably already seen in the start of this video. You would have known a bit of the story already. But it's one story that, with being off Whit Lane, that sort of tarnished the area a little bit because of what happened. And it's a very, very brutal story. Like I say, I do revive some of these stories. You know, not all history, I've said it before, but not all history is rosy. It can be dark and it can be quite sinister, and this story definitely is. Now, like I say, over the years I've been thinking about making this, and I've always wanted to delve more into the backstory. But basically today is the day that we're going to uncover it, and we're going to actually go. We're not just going to go to the crime scene where it actually happened. We're going to go to the street that she lived on, and we're going to try our best to locate where she could possibly be buried. But it will be a bit of a wild goose chase because it was so long ago. What are your memories of this, Dad? Do you ever remember anything?
I just
back in
always
the day?
remember being a bit evasive of crossing the bridge when it was dark, because it always had that sinister feel to it. We knew there'd been a murder on it, we knew there'd been hangings under the bridge,
Yeah.
but we always knew that the murder of this young girl had taken place over there, and it was a brutal murder as well.
Yeah.
And it always had, when you come over here, when it was dark, it always felt eerie to come across the bridge. That's what I'm saying.
When just saying, like, there is this sort of folklore tale that people off Whit Lane know, that when you sort of cross this bridge, there is a story or a ghost story attached to it of what people describe as a white lady. Could it have, you know, because it's so connected with so much. It's not just this one death that's actually happened here. There is so many deaths, and you know, people have taken their lives around here too. But going right back when it was the old school Brindle Heath round here, this spot was for some strange reason, is a hot spot for people actually dying. But like I said, today we're going to uncover the story, the poor story of Kathleen, and tell her tale, and hopefully we'll do it some justice. Right, so where I am now, underneath this bridge, Kathleen would have quite possibly have come down these steps here right at the back, or she would have come this way around this corner. But one thing is for sure, is that Kathleen did walk this way because this was her route to get to work. And I'm just going to take you now. So this is Cobden Street here, and this is Laundry Street. And Laundry Street really hasn't changed that much. I mean, you said there used to be an old pub here, Dad. There's an old pub here. And obviously around here was an housing estate, basically. But if we just make our way down here now, this really hasn't changed much. Looking back at the old photographs from the murder scene, it's so similar to how it would have been. The only thing different is that it did veer to the right more, and these railings wasn't here. But you could just imagine Kathleen walking down here, not knowing what was going to sort of, that day when she got up, she didn't have any clue that her life would have been taken from her. And just on these steps here is where Dalip was actually waiting for her.
What do you mean, no?
This place really hasn't changed that much. The old murder scene, literally. Kathleen's bag, Dalip's bag, the butcher's knife was just basically on this floor right in front of me now. And sort of using this grid as a bit of a reference point, because this is where the frenzied attack sort of took place, and where my dad stood now, that's where Dalip was waiting that fatal day for her. But like I say, using this little grid as a bit of a reference point, this was just blood soaked all around here. The frenzied attack happened within seconds before he turned the knife on himself. But these walls, you know, underneath this tarmacked floor are the cobbles that are blood soaked from back in the day when Kathleen was attacked. So this tarmack's just hiding up the blood soaked cobbles. And after the attack happened right here, she then frantically ran, which was Snowden Bridges, right here, where she basically was crying for help and totally shocked. She didn't realise what had happened to her.
She said she'd been hit.
Yeah, she was just screaming, I've been hit. And I don't think the reality is sunken in what had actually just happened. But Dalip also plunged a knife into his stomach right here too. It's so weird to actually be stood here. I mean, like I say, I'm from this area and I've been past here so many times, but it just has that sort of knot in your stomach feel to it round here. Even the kink in the wall, I'm using it as a bit of a reference point because the bag, just off this kink in the wall here, the bag and everything was here. Dalip's briefcase was here, and just over this, I mean, if she would have just got over here, her work was literally to the left at Brand's Packaging.
A matter of 30 odd steps
Yeah.
for safety over the bridge. She was at Brand's mill, paper mill. So from there to over this, just over there, she'd have been in the safe of her work colleagues.
Or even if someone would have actually heard the scuffle going on before he frantically killed her, you know, you're talking a matter of seconds and her life could have been saved.
Yeah.
But sadly that day, Kathleen's life was taken away from her. And, you know, like I said to you before, history is basically made up from happy memories and good memories, but it's also sad ones too. But the story of Kathleen is very sad. And these bricks are the original bricks from back in 1963 when she was taken away. So we're just trying to keep going back and forth with the old photographs from the crime scene. And if I was to sort of put my money on it, I would say that right here, just about here, this is where his briefcase was on the floor, and where that grid is and sort of to this wall was her bag and purse, I think. But we're just weighing it up that he must have, just basically in front of me now was a pool of blood just all on this street. So he's obviously attacked her towards this wall here, so she would have gone backwards here, and she would have been attacked right basically right where I am now. And there was just the amount of blood that was on the floor. I mean, he stabbed her 6 times, I think. You know, it's a horrific thing that he did, and then turned the knife on himself. So on the murder scene photographs, the blood is the majority of her, but he did stab himself straight in the stomach too. But she immediately shot off here to the right. So once she'd been attacked and she got free from him, she ran straight here, and she was, you know, basically begging for help, but she died on the way to the hospital. But it's really weird, it's very eerie still. It's never lost that eeriness, has it? But basically, where I actually am stood now, right in this very spot, this is where, and definitely towards this wall, this is where the attack took place back in the 60s. But it's never lost that horrible feeling round here. It really hasn't.
But she was kind, friendly. My mum used to always speak well of her. She had this reputation, just being a nice person to everybody. The only thing I remember was that all the houses in the drive, they all had the curtains drawn, which they used to do that if there was a funeral anyway back then. I can remember that. She was this sort of kind-natured person to everybody.
Like my dad said, and obviously me too, like I used to come over here and fish on the secret pond. There's a pond behind here, and I'd always run. I'd leg it back, like run up and down here, because I never walked over this bridge because it was just so weird. But like I said earlier too, there's multiple deaths going right back to the Victorian period on this bridge and round here. But the one that sort of stuck with me was the murder of Kathleen, because my auntie worked with her. And when I picked her brains a few years back, I remember having a bit of a chat about it with her, and she was telling me some stuff, and I just thought, wow, like, it actually happened right here. So here I am, and I'm on Westwood Drive now, and this is where Kathleen actually lived. Just out of respect for the family, I'm not going to film the actual house, but basically it's just up that road. Like I say, out of respect for the family, I'm not going to be filming it. But these houses are of that time period. Still, some of the old signs are still here, probably from back when Kathleen lived here all those years ago. And she would have made her way up to where she worked in Brands Packaging over Cobden Bridge. But it's pretty strange and a bit surreal to be walking around here, just purely because I know the story that I'm covering. So what I'm going to do now is take you from the scene here, just up these steps, and this is where Kathleen and Dalip actually worked. And I have always known it as Brands Packaging, but it was called Brands Mill, Brands Paper Mill back then. So this is the sort of view from the top and what it overlooks. And like I say, Kathleen would have come from down here. If she would have walked it, she would have come down from underneath that bridge all the way down to literally here. And all it would have been was a short walk over this bridge. This is Cobden Bridge. just over when you go first there to here, where that sort of tent is now. That's where it were. She would have come down these very steps. I mean, these steps, these are the original steps.
Yeah.
Not like the other side where they're sort of plastic. These are the original steps.
That's the original bridge as well.
Yeah. So she would have walked directly here and turned into here. Yeah. And this was the entrance here. And it was a big building. And I think the office block where she worked was here. It's recently been took down in the last couple of years. But if you look at that old photograph that I've shown you, you'll see like a big tube pipe, look like a sewage pipe. And that's the other side of it. But obviously all the bushes and the gates from the other side you can't see anymore, but that is basically it from the other side.
Seconds from safety.
I know, second, like my dad just said there. She was seconds from safety just over here and she'd have been absolutely fine. But, you know, it just goes to show how things can just change from just somebody making their mind up that day. I mean, she went, like I said, when she got up that morning, she didn't have an absolute inkling what was going to happen to her. But obviously Dalip had this building up, this rage, this sort of emotion, this hatred was building up and building up, and to the point where obviously he said that he never tried to kill her. He was always going to intend to take his own life in front of her to show how much he loved her, but jealousy and rage must have got the better of him that day, and he completely lost it. And he just said, I blacked out, I don't remember doing anything. But this is where she would have come to work every single day.
So what happened next? Well, like most things of this nature, the story hit the papers. Dalip survived, and he pleaded not guilty, saying that he never intended on killing Kathleen that day.
I never meant for any of this to happen.
Instead, he wanted to take his own life in front of her.
I wanted to take my life in front of her.
Quote, I wanted to see her one more time and kill myself.
Who's that on the bridge?
I waited on the corner of Laundry Street
You see? What's he doing?
and she started laughing. I don't know what happened to me. I had only intended on hurting myself in front of her to hurt her feelings. But I stabbed her and then myself. I wish the doctors would have let me die. Contrary to what Dalip said, we need to scratch deeper under the surface. And this is where the story starts to take a different turn. At first glance, it looks like a twisted love story gone wrong. Kathleen was leading Dalip on, taking him for a ride, and crushing his emotions publicly, causing him to have deep, dark thoughts, mentally making him unstable, adding petrol to the fire. But in reality, this couldn't have been further from the truth. Throughout researching the story and doing numerous interviews with people that used to work at brands, I found out a bit more about Dalip's personal and private life. Dalip came from a wealthy family, and when he was on trial, his parents paid for the best that money could buy for the top lawyers of the time to take on the case. They fought the hardest to get the case dropped from murder, which would have seen Dalip behind bars for the rest of his life, to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. This saw Dalip go to Broadmoor, a psychiatric hospital for the criminally insane. It's rumoured that Dalip served only 3 years before he was back out on the streets. It's rumoured he moved and settled for the remainder of his life in Prestoley, near Stoneclough, only a few miles up the road from where he murdered Kathleen.
It was down here at Prestoley, and it was summer of 1976 when it was red hot. And that's when she said they got these lovely neighbours. And I said, the way she was talking, I thought, that's him from Brands. Her name was Dalip. I said, right. I said, all right, what's his other name? She said, Kumar. She mentioned he'd worked in Salford, this, that, and the other. I said to her, I said, he's a murderer. She said, you are? I said, he's a murderer. He murdered a girl on Cobden Bridge. No. Too nice a person. I said, I'm sorry, he murdered a girl. I knew it was him.
By all accounts, it's believed that Dalip went on to live a very good life. A life that Kathleen had taken from her. At the tender age of just 25 years old, described by many as a gentle, kind woman. A carer for a mother who died just 12 months earlier, and the rock to her father, who within the space of just 1 year had to deal with not just the loss of his wife, but his beautiful daughter too. A respectable man of the area who became very much a recluse after what had happened to his family.
He was never the same after it happened. Completely went into himself. He was suddenly left in the house on his own. You know, I mean, he hardly came out of the house, you hardly saw him. In those days, I mean, the idea of giving people counselling and help after something like that, it didn't exist, did it? You were on your own, stiff upper lip.
Now, I'm not saying that Dalip didn't have any mental issues. It's clear to see he was unstable. But justice has never been served for Kathleen's death. Dalip purposely went to buy the knife from a shop in Bolton. He purposely waited for Kathleen. And I believe he purposely meant to take a life that day. Contrary to the reports and the picture that's been painted about Dalip Kumar, the man that committed the unforgivable sin, taking the precious life of another human being.
So here I am. I'm in St John's Church, and it's only a tiny little graveyard. Possibly about 1,000 headstones in total, I'd say. But we've tried high and low. Me and my dad came here a couple of weeks back, and we literally went round everyone. I've searched online, and I've been back today for about an hour, and I cannot find Kathleen's grave, which is really, really sad, because I wanted to end the video here and pay my respects at her graveside. But upon reflection of the whole story, when I was a kid, I heard about it, spoke to relatives that had worked with her. I thought I heard someone there. Spoke to relatives that worked with Kathleen, and you know, the top and bottom of it is that this poor girl was only 26 years old, and she had a life, full life ahead of her, and it was snatched from her that day by a wicked man. That, although I do believe he had these mental issues, there is no excuse for what he did. He had this jealous, bitter rage inside him, and he basically took Kathleen's life because he decided that he wanted to. And like I said in the video, he came from this wealthy family. He had this wealthy family. that paid top whack for the lawyers to get him off with dropping the charge from murder to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibilities. And within 3 years, Dalip was back out, and he went on to live a full life. Now, if he's still alive today, it'd put him in about 80, he'd be in his mid-80s, 85, 84. But he went on to live a full life, and he took the life of Kathleen that day. He purposely went and bought the knife. He purposely waited for Kathleen, and he purposely took her life. And I don't care what anyone says, he knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted to take her life. And, you know, it's the repercussions that affect me. A poor dad, only 12 months earlier, a poor dad had to not just deal with losing his wife, he then had to deal with losing his daughter. And Mr. Parkinson, from what I've gathered and spoke to people that sort of knew him, said he was this outgoing, like, really nice guy. And within this short space of time, he lost his wife, he lost his daughter, and he became this sort of recluse that never came out of the house. And, you know, she had her life cut short at the age of 26, but he went on to live this normal, good life, as it was described. He went on to live a good life. And, like I said, when I was younger, I heard about the story. And the story was that Dalip was this, you know, man that fell head over heels in love with Kathleen. She led him on. She went to these places with him, and, you know, she sort of led him down the merry way, as if she liked him. And none of this was true. And the more that I've delved into it, the more this is not a case of a love story gone wrong. This is a case of someone who had some serious jealous rage and jealousy issues inside of him, and he couldn't bear that Kathleen didn't like him. And for whatever reason, however it made sense in his head, he thought, I'm gonna take her life. So this picture that's been painted about him being this, you know, mentally ill person that was, I'm not saying he didn't have mental issues, but they painted this picture, it was diminished responsibilities because he was, you know, he was had mental problems upstairs. There's no excuse. That's what the papers wanted you to believe. Sorry if I'm rambling on, but it's hard to get my words out because I feel really passionate about this story. So Kathleen, it's about 90, I'm about 95% sure that she's buried in this cemetery somewhere, because she only lived 2 minutes up the road on Westwood Drive. And everyone I've spoke to have said, no, she is buried in here. And I also thought she could possibly be in Agecroft, but I've been told she didn't. It's in this cemetery somewhere. So I'm going to end the video here now. I just want to thank you all for watching this video. And, you know, I never ask this on any of the videos, but if you like this sort of stuff, and if you've liked this video and you like similar things like this, I'd really appreciate it if you went over and just subscribe to the channel. Don't cost anything, just YouTube, or follow me on Facebook, stuff like that. But like I say, I really appreciate every single person that has watched this video, every single person that's helped me make this video. And I've got Kathleen a bunch of flowers. I don't know where to put them, so I'm just going to put them at the foot of the church. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you for taking time out to watch the video, and may Kathleen never be forgotten. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave these flowers here as a gesture to Kathleen, as a way to saying that your memory and your life isn't forgotten. And these flowers are not just from me, but on behalf of everyone that supports this channel and that has took the time out to watch this video. And may you rest in peace, Kathleen.
she was kind, friendly. My mum used to always speak well of her. She had this reputation of just being a nice person to everybody. The only thing I remember was that all the houses in the drive, they all had the curtains drawn. Which they used to do that if there was a funeral anyway back then. I can remember that. She was this sort of kind-natured person to everybody.